And here we are. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, or wherever you are. I'm Mary Grace. This is Mary Grace TV, and we are actually coming to you live. We have a really great guest here. He's been on our show before. We sent out a lot of notifications, and so some of you have already commented that you really had a great experience listening to Dr. Troy Spurill the last time he was here. And if you're new, I want to introduce him. He is a functional medicine practitioner, and he is based up in Minnesota. His facility up there, Synapse Center for Health and Healing. Whoops, wrong one. You can get medals too. Synapse is up in Minnesota. They're an affiliate partner with us, and some of you have contacted them. Some of you have actually already been taking part in their wellness and healing programs. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But welcome to the show, Dr. Spruill. It's so good to have you back. It's just a pleasure.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much.
So we have a lot to talk about, and I think that one of the things I do want to jump right into is people have been making lately that there's been a lot of talk about dietary changes to help people reverse or address issues that maybe the traditional medical system has said can't be fixed or that it's going to be chronic, especially metabolic conditions like type 2 diabetes, which leads to a lot of other issues that people think are just standalone issues. So when we were off air, we were talking about this, and I said that I had gone low carb, and then you said, "Me too," and my wife, and then it turns out that you're doing carnivore eating, and that's basically what I'm doing. And so I wanna talk about that because it seems radical, um, but it turns out it's actually not.
Yeah.
So just from a medical standpoint, it seems like a lot of doctors have embraced this, which is like I let me just rephrase that. Not doctors like Dr. Fauci.
Right.
Doctors doctors who actually care
Yes.
and know what they're talking about and are not in it for the fame and power. I
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify that. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Good
yeah.
clarification. He's
Yeah.
embraced deep pockets. That's what he's embraced.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. So there's right now people have really been they're inflamed for many different reasons. So you'll see a lot of diets kind of trend in and out, and so
Yeah.
first thing I'm going to say is carnivore is not necessarily for everyone, and there's modifications of it. But back in the day, in Jesus's time, 2,000 years ago, there wasn't this abundance of every type of food. So you would get pockets of these different food types. And then there were people like where I grew up in Canada. And so in northern Canada, the Inuit would just live off of whale fat, whale meat, and blubber, basically. And their nutritional status was good. So there's a lot of misperceptions as far as the diet itself. And the problem is we just really overconsume sugar. So our body has become really poor at handling and managing sugar. And we have it everywhere and it tastes good. So it tends to replace a lot of the other foods. And people who overconsume sugar can become obese. You can start to affect your insulin. Even if you don't have diabetes, we have the highest levels of insulin resistance that we've ever seen, and that leads to cardiovascular disease. It can trigger autoimmune disease. With all the inflammatory components that we have going on in life right now, whether it be stress, COVID, different um, parts of our diet and infections, they all trigger inflammatory responses. So ultimately, carnivore will decrease the inflammation for most people, not all, but most people.
And I wanna ask you about sugar because one thing that I'm learning, and I'm trying to help my dad with this because he has had type 2 diabetes for years and he's overweight, and he's never really been what I would call a big sugar eater. He's not candy
Yeah.
or cakes. Now he does like his cookies, but he's not what I would call a binge eater or, a food hoarder or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about necessarily people who have strong addictions. Uh,
No.
but when it comes to the types of foods that people are eating, does the body differentiate between a cookie, a slice of bread, a bowl of rice when you eat it in terms of, releasing insulin and dealing with the sugar that comes into
Yeah.
your body?
So it's a great question because the answer is yes, and it depends on the quality of the food. So there are whole grain rice, there are whole grain breads, and so I'm going to say it this way: when you eat a food in its whole form, like an apple, the sugar, which we call fructose, is actually bound to the fiber. So it's like a tree with tree branch, and the tree branches have leaves, or that's the stuff we're going to be eating, is the sugars off of those. So as you eat it, it slowly goes through your digestive system, and you
Because of the
slowly,
fiber?
because the fiber, it breaks apart slowly and then releases the sugar. When you eat a cookie, it's just straight sugar. When you have
Okay.
sugar cane baked into stuff, it's like a hit of sugar. So that's
Mhm.
called glycemic index or glycemic
Okay.
load. So as you eat that stuff, your sugar will shoot up, and then the insulin has to respond really quickly.
Mhm. So, here's something that I've run into because I've been conscious of ingredients, my whole life. And I've not my whole life, but adult life. I've really thought about whether it's organic or it's
Yeah.
been sprayed with pesticides or things like that. And it seems like there's a whole market that has sprung up around healthy junk food,
Yes.
healthy cookies, and, so, for example, like, if you buy the chocolate chip cookies at Whole Foods, they're not as bad for you,
Yeah.
or if you get something that says that it's heart healthy, um, mostly those things actually are made with things like canola oil
Yeah.
or other vegetable seed oils, which I have recently found out are industrial waste.
Yes.
Um, so what are some things that people need to look out for when it comes to making a change to going low carb, whether it's a whole grain diet or whether the carbs are in the form of fruit, whole grain, like because people can stack up on those too, and before you
Oh,
know
yeah.
it, they're having 200 grams of carbs from fruit,
Yes. Oh,
right?
yeah.
So what is if somebody's trying to reverse or you know, get type 2 diabetes from type 2 to prediabetes or prediabetes to non-diabetic, um, you know, is it better just to really cut the carbs altogether and go low, low carb? Is that something that's effective for a lot of people?
Yeah, that it actually is. There will be some detox reactions because you have to
Okay.
retrain your body how to use sugar in a different way. So your liver is going to be trying to break down what's called glycogen and give you sugar stores because you're deficient. Eventually, you'll end up into what we call ketosis if you're doing a ketogenic diet or even a carnivore diet, and you can get a ketone meter, and that means you're burning fat for energy. Now, you actually get more energy when you burn fat, but some people aren't efficient at that either. If you cheat just a little bit, then it's going to go back to the sugar, and that's kind of the slippery slope, and that's where
Mhm.
you can get into trouble. You said one thing early on, that comment, that statement, and that is, people have to be careful. If you go into an organic food store, which I am all about organic food, I think that is real food. We should be calling that food and everything else chemical laden food.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
you can get what we call is clean poison in these organic.
Okay. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
clean poison,
Yeah.
and the number one culprit are clean organic foods that can still cause diabetes. And so if you have clean cookies, that just means the ingredients are clean, but it doesn't change the actual sugar reaction. And so a lot of people will think they're doing better, which they are from a toxicity perspective, but not from a blood sugar management perspective.
Mhm.
So
And
that's a
and
real big one.
okay, and that brings me to the question too of, these sort of safe sweeteners, things I think people call them keto snacks, keto junk food,
Yeah,
where I think it's a marketing thing where it says keto friendly,
yeah.
and it has, alcohol sugars or, stevia or things like that. is the body
Oh, sorry, I think you froze up on me there. I'm not sure if you're still there.
going to have an insulin response?
Well, I'm not sure if Mary's frozen or I am. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the keto. And so the keto snacks can be also problematic. So if there's stevia or anything like that in there, then we do see challenges. Yeah, I believe she's frozen. So I'm just going to answer the rest of that question. So when it comes to the actual keto snacks, there are things like stevia can be good for people. It's natural. We have a general saying: if God made it, it's good. If man changed it, just beware. And so we have to be careful. So if man has made the actual ingredient, then it may not be natural to our system. So some of the keto stuff is good, but it's artificial still. So now you're sacrificing the sugar for the toxicity. And what we want is both. We want to reduce our overall toxic burden by eating organic, clean, natural, whole food as much as possible, and really try and limit the sugar contents with that. So the keto stuff is highly, highly marketed because it can cause weight loss. And this is not a new thing. Back in the day, we used to have the Atkins diet, and the Atkins diet would have people working in the um, uh, to burn fat again, and they'd get into a ketogenic state. It's very similar to the current diet, but some of these people would actually be deficient in minerals. They'd actually have problems with their antioxidant status. So you still needed some of those antioxidants. So we are very, very conscious of that right now when it comes to the overall balancing. So I like personally getting, for most people, when you're talking about diabetes, or even more so, how many people have sugar cravings? Because right now, when people have stress, they end up having a sugar craving. And most people, I always ask this when I'm talking with my patients and I'm doing some lectures. I'll look at and ask people, what do you crave when you have stress? And for women, it tends to be chocolate. Anything with chocolate is what they'll go to from a sugar point of view. For guys, it's alcohol. Unless they don't drink alcohol, then it can be bread and then chocolates like that. So if you're craving those sugars, that's a sign that things are already out of balance with the stress state. And so that's part one. But what you want to do is, even before you can get to any type of diabetes or pre-diabetes, is recognize that you're craving sugars. And if you are going into a pretty strict carnivore diet or high protein diet, can definitely play into that. So I see you're back there. I kind of answered your question
Hey,
right
hold on
before you
just a
froze.
second. We lost internet.
Yeah, we caught that. I was still
Uh,
going and I was on, just so you know. So I was talking about sugar cravings. So that
hey, doctor. So I've lost internet, so the feed has been down.
Well,
Uh,
I think I was still going.
isn't
So,
it crazy? Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, it's just my whole internet went out. So the good thing is I didn't have to restart here.
yeah.
So for those of you who saw me get up and leave, I'm back. So I don't know if you heard Dr. Spruill, but Lisa on YouTube said we're back, and I'm hoping that the Rumble stream didn't go down. Let me just check on that really quickly. It's just so bizarre. Um, looks like, uh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, great. Okay. That's just bizarre. Okay, so, for those of you who are just trying to tune in and figure out, I'm Mary Grace. This is Mary Grace TV, and we're talking to Dr. Troy Spurill, and we are talking about right now, we're talking about sugar. We're talking about specifically metabolic issues like uh, type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, metabolic syndrome, those kinds of things, and the types of sugars that have an impact on that, whether it's clean sugar,
Yeah.
organic, different types of foods. I was talking about keto junk food, and then all of a sudden, apparently, somebody doesn't like that. So we're back.
I did answer that, and they did hear
Okay.
me, so I did go through that keto junk food, so I'll fill you in later on
Okay,
it.
okay, we'll talk about that later. And I think this is just really important because we're living in a society now where we have so much available to us.
Yeah,
And one of the things that I've noticed too is that we see a lot of public health notices and corporate push toward eating a plant-based diet
yeah,
exclusively, to the expense of even saying that meat is bad for you, that eggs are bad for you, that everything is gonna raise your cholesterol, that everything is going to give you heart disease. And we know now that it's pretty clear that inflammation is really the culprit here,
yeah,
and that these are metabolic disorders. And so it's almost like they want us to believe that third world poverty food, survival food is preferable for our nutrient, needs to the things that Americans have eaten for a long time, which is like red meat
yeah,
and fat. Um, and I think that's I think we're all in agreement that if the government and the scientists and the three-letter agencies are telling us it's good for us or bad for us, we should just flip it
yeah,
and do the opposite of what they say. What do you
absolutely.
think about that?
Yeah, absolutely, and our saying here is, "If God made it, it's good. If man changed it, beware." And so anything that is innately given to us by God, it's good. And so there is all of this information can be manipulated. Science can be manipulated, and that's what they do. That's why we have all of these diets that are fad diets. So if it's a whole food from God and it hasn't been tampered with by man, it's pretty good for you, right? Or it's very good for
Mhm,
you. The problem is almost all of our food has been tampered with. I was doing another show, an interview, and I was asked about a new healthcare system because I'm meeting with heads of hospitals and they're asking what we're doing. They're asking how we might be able to help them because they're struggling right now because their system of healthcare is collapsing. And my answer on the show was the first thing I would do to absolutely help everyone with their health is fire everyone at the FDA. Every single
yeah.
person. They need to be completely put away to the side because they're doing us a disservice. They've changed our food and our drugs are manipulating our health. And that is causing and contributing to our inflammation. And so that's
Well,
why people are
yeah.
more reactive these days.
And one of the things too that has come to my attention, especially because I've been following some of the carnivore doctors on X, they have been really bringing attention to the posts that are being put up by the American Diabetes
Yeah.
Association. And the American Diabetes Association, it turns out, is promoting really heavy, high carb foods and snacks.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking, a meal that has 2 or 300 grams of carbs per meal.
Yeah.
And, I've been more closely monitoring my dad's intake, and he's mostly, I would say, what you call ketovore, where
Yeah.
he's mostly meats and eggs and some cheese, but really low carb. And but, he's 86. So he's gonna do things that maybe don't fit that profile sometimes, and he went out to breakfast last week and had some French toast. And when I took his blood sugar a couple hours later, it was in the 200s.
Yeah.
And so I asked him what he thought about that and why he thought it did that, and he made the connection, that it was the bread and the French toast. So even though it wasn't a piece of candy, it wasn't a cake, It wasn't cookies. It was
Yeah.
what a lot of people would consider a healthy breakfast. Um, but it still spiked his sugar, and that is something that I think people aren't necessarily aware of because they're getting messaging from these so-called authoritative entities that are telling them the opposite.
Yeah, our authoritative entities basically have gotten it wrong for a long time, and you know how we
Yeah.
can tell? Our results.
Yeah.
There's even the CDC, which I don't trust much, these days at all,
No.
but they have on their website, you can look in the diabetes section of their website, they have track the data for obesity in the United States. And in the
Mhm.
1990s, there was only a couple states that were more than 10%
Mhm.
obese. And then each year they tracked it and they show in the actual PowerPoint presentation that they have online there that within a couple years, there's a couple states who are at 20% obesity. And by the early 2000s, there were states that were at 30% of the state was obese, and there was no state under 10% obesity. And then by 2010, we had Mississippi and I think it's West Virginia that were over 50% of the state was obese,
Wow.
and we didn't have any state under 20% obesity. So by early 2000s, our
Wow.
best state was worse than our worst state in the early 1990s.
And that's a 10-year difference,
Yeah,
10 to 15 years,
10 to
and
15
now
years.
we're 24 years on, and I
Yeah,
imagine that it's much worse. You know, you look at pictures of people just going about their business in the 70s and 80s, and they were slender.
yeah,
And, you know, they weren't eating super restrictive diets, but one of the big things that changed, I think, was the proliferation of seed oils in the food
yes,
industry. And when I say seed oils, I talk about canola, soy, anything that's from a plant that is marketed as a heart healthy oil. And it's highly industrialized and
yeah,
chemically altered to produce an oil that can be considered somewhat edible, but it's actually industrial waste. Same with Crisco. And this is, to me, one of the biggest crimes against humanity. I
yeah,
know that people get upset about the jibber jabbers and the things that have been promoted in the last few years that have caused a lot of damage to people. But I think really we have to look at the food supply
yeah,
to find an even bigger culprit, because the fact of the matter is, it's my belief that people, based on the statistics that you quoted about obesity, is that people were already vulnerable, to the COVID and any
yes.
sickness for that matter because of these metabolic changes, right?
Absolutely. We
I
we
mean,
identified that people who were susceptible to COVID had pre-existing inflammation and and get this, lowered melatonin status. Melatonin is the deep sleep hormone.
okay.
You only have problems with melatonin if you're in fight or flight constantly,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
stress, or if you have underlying inflammation or infection. It'll actually convert a chemical called tryptophan to a neurotoxin called quinolinic acid. And so if you have too much inflammation in the body, if you're stressed out, and if you have an underlying infection, then those are the things that cause that conversion, and that's what pre-exposed you to not doing well with COVID. So there's a lot of things you can do, just natural diet and lifestyle to help prevent that. And the majority of our patients did very, very well and were asymptomatic regardless of age. We had people in their 90s who got COVID and it didn't do anything because we had their basic markers of stress, inflammation, infection
Okay.
already addressed heading into it.
Interesting,
Yeah.
interesting, and I think one thing that bears mentioning here is that not everybody who looks healthy is healthy. So we're talking about obesity, which
Yep.
is a real concern. But you can also have the skinny fat people who
Yes.
have poor metabolic health, and in some cases, pre-diabetes or diabetes. There's a popular YouTuber that I follow who is very fit, and, her channel is Girl in the Woods, and I can mention this because she talked about it on her channel. She actually went on kind of a year-long fruitarian diet,
Mm.
and she was eating quite a bit of fruit, like, a lot. Her name is Brooke Whipple. She was on the show alone. And she went public about this because she actually I mean, she builds log cabins by herself,
Oh,
she's
yeah.
not and she's not a big person, she's about my size, and so she's kind of a badass, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I that's why I like her channel.
Yes.
Yeah, like life goals, be like Brooke. But she admitted that she had found out that she actually had diabetes.
Yeah.
And it was because of that excessive fruit consumption, and I would imagine the cortisol levels that she in experiences just because of the types of really heavy, intense work that she does, outdoors and physically with her body, and she's also put herself through a lot of intense, stress being on these survival shows and
Oh,
things like
yeah.
that. So it's very interesting. Her show is called Girl in the Woods, and I mean, it's really I've learned a lot from them. And her husband is Bush Radical, that's his channel.
Yeah, I
Um,
love
yeah, and they really yeah, they're good teachers, but so the point though is that she's my size and even has more muscle mass, and then she found out that she had diabetes, and so she was doing some diet reversal
yeah.
things, to address that. So I wanted to talk I know that you talked about the sweeteners and things, and we might have missed that, but somebody was asking about monk fruit, and
Yep.
I wanted to I've been hearing a lot lately about people who have a sugar or carb addiction, and when they ingest any kind of sweetener, whether it's fruit or a sugar substitute or a healthy sweetener, is it good sometimes for people to abstain completely from that? I mean, isn't that what the carnivore diet is really about? It's
Yeah.
it's an elimination diet, to help people get off of those cravings because of how it affects your insulin levels?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you guys, straight up, it's so good for that very reason. You keep it simple. We have people
Okay,
I'm gonna say this way, if you drink coffee and you stop drinking coffee and you get a headache, it means you've been over consuming coffee because of the
okay,
caffeine.
okay.
So if you have sugar addictions and you stop sugar completely just by eating a few things, like the hardcore carnivore reset will be something like beef and eggs and maybe bacon, and that's all you have: butter, beef, eggs, and bacon, and that's what you have day and night for 2 weeks. Now you will detox if you have a sugar addiction problem.
Yeah.
If you don't have a sugar addiction problem, you won't detox. So if you feel lousy, and this is what I do recommend, because if you have, I'm a huge fan of monk fruit. I'm a huge fan of some of the other sugar alternatives, like raw local honey, things like that. But it is enough for some people to then crave the other sugars. You have to know yourself.
Mhm,
And some people can have just a little bit and they're fine. So make it good, healthy, raw
mhm,
local honey, or good maple syrup, and that'll be okay, or monk fruit, and that'll be okay. But
mhm,
if you're over consuming the fruit, and the sugar from fruit, then there's going to be consequences of that as well, as
mhm.
pointed out by the YouTuber. And we see that actually when you eat too much fructose, it actually increases an acid in your body called uric acid.
Okay,
Uric acid we know goes high with gout, but at a little bit lower level, if that uric acid lodges into the brain, it starts causing memory loss. It's pre-Alzheimer's. And so we're seeing
okay.
a condition. And with gout, usually your uric acid is above 7, 8 in the blood. But with the memory loss, it starts at as a uric acid above 5.5.
Interesting.
It is.
Wow.
Yes. So
Wow.
the fructose is really a big deal because certain people will
Okay.
convert it to that uric acid really quickly.
And they're thinking that they're being healthier by eating
Yes.
fruit, like, that's what she thought. I mean, she was
Yeah.
just it was summer and she was eating like a whole pineapple and a bunch of watermelon, and
Yeah.
we think of it as being healthy, but again, she developed diabetes, and then we also have been hearing that Alzheimer's is what is considered type 3
Yeah.
diabetes, because you're finding that it's metabolic, correct?
Yes. Absolutely.
And so as far as insulin goes, I didn't know that. I had never heard that about the uric acid.
Yeah.
That's fascinating that they kind of correlate, right?
Yeah, and any acid in the body will actually cause insulin to become more resistant. So when your acids
Okay,
go up, insulin is more resistant, but especially
okay,
uric acid. And fructose and fungus or molds, really set that off.
okay. Wow, this is so it's so interesting. And when you talk about insulin as well, um, when you talk about insulin, the thing about the thing that am learning is that you talked about ketosis and being in a ketogenic state, which is when your body is burning your own fat for fuel.
Yeah,
And I've recently learned that when your insulin levels are elevated, for example, when you have a sweet taste, it's a signal to your body to release insulin because your body is the insulin is actually dealing with and I'm using layman's terms, but it's processing what you put into it. And when you're eating starches and carbs, or your body thinks you are, it's going to release more insulin. The
yes,
problem is when there's nothing when there's no interaction or exchange, then the body stores what you've eaten as fat.
yeah,
And that's how we get this. And so if you're trying to burn fat and you're using a lot of sugar substitutes, um, then is it possible that you're actually not gonna burn fat because of the insulin reaction that you're creating, even with that little sweet taste,
yeah.
the 0
That's
calorie?
exactly what's happening, and even if people are
Okay.
exercising, you can do an exercise for 20 or 30 minutes, and it might burn off 600 calories in that exercise, and then a little bit more throughout the day, but it won't equal the 2,000 calories you're eating during that day. So you never
Mhm.
get to that mode of burning off the fat. So then people will try fasting, intermittent fasting, which intermittent fasting does work to help reestablish that for 75% of the population.
Mhm.
But the reality is it becomes a lot harder to get people to actually lose weight. So when you were talking earlier about like it's almost like they want us to eat bugs and all these things,
Yeah.
the one thing that actually balances our helps our adrenal glands, which is our stress gland, is more protein. We need that protein. I saw there was a question that popped up there about excessive salt reactions, and I want to comment on that because your kidneys help balance the salt. And if you have a reaction to salt and you get like a enlargement of any type of the vascular response, it's usually because the kidneys and the adrenals are not balanced. Now, if you're on like a medication like losartan or something like that, that will cause your potassium to go high, and that's the reason why you have reactions to salt. But it's an adrenal problem. Proteins help the adrenal problems. Sugar and caffeine actually make the adrenal problems worse. And so we look at the standard American diet and we'll use alcohol to kind of get to bed or to relax and go to sleep, and then
Mhm.
caffeine to wake up. And then we have a stressful day. Well, that's a horrific scenario for how our brain communicates with our adrenal glands and regulates our salt and our insulin, our cortisol.
Okay.
So that's why we end up with a lot of those challenges and problems.
So this maybe goes back to a question that Lisa had about salt. Do you see her question
Yeah.
about salt reactions? She says, "I have an excessive reaction to salt. If I'm not careful, the salt crystals create enlargement of my veins, and they become very painful." That's crazy. Um,
That is a sign of that's an inflammatory reaction, but we do see that quite a bit. So the sodium, the potassium, and the chloride have to be balanced. Now, I can't diagnose or anything without
sure.
seeing history, but if there's a lot of medications will cause that, inflammation will cause that. I see that
Mhm.
with sleep disorders, and when there's a deficiency in the omega-3 fatty acids, and then too much inflammation. So that generally is exactly what I was talking about when there's a sleep disorder or
Mhm.
problems with melatonin, and then cortisol can and insulin can come into play there.
Okay.
So there is a good strategy that can come about with that. Now, you also see that with dehydration. When you're too dehydrated, we
Okay.
see that exact reaction as well. And there are
Interesting.
some sneaky things, some hormone things that come into play if
Okay.
there's other
Okay.
fibromyalgia and stuff like that. But the
And
sleep is a big part, and hydration.
okay, and is this is it sounds like this is something that would it would be a good, type of issue to, work with your team about, to try to get to the bottom of this. Is
Yeah.
that something that would be good? I'm trying to find, let me just cue this up here. I always think I'm ready and then I'm not really. Let me find it. Where is it? Hold on, guys. I'm trying to it's time for a commercial break and I've got to get it on here. Here we go. All right, thank you. So this is a good moment to break for a commercial because you're going to get some information about how to book with Dr. Troy, but don't go away. If you need to step away, leave the volume on so that you can just get some information about what we're doing and who we're partnering with here. When you go and purchase or book with one of our partners, it helps us here at the show. So don't tune out and don't get mad at me for playing a commercial. I'll be right back. Don't get mad. Okay, here we go. 4 minutes. Don't go away. I'm Mary Grace, and I am one of the biggest fans of MyPillow because they have quality America First products that are just made right here in the country, and they last. We have the towels, and I have a big issue with towels that shrink up after the first washing. The MyPillow towels stay color fast, they stay in shape, and they stay that way for years after repeated washings. You can't ask for better. Plus, they actually work. When somebody buys from MyPillow using the promo code Mary Grace, that does a couple of things. It brings in a little bit of an affiliate commission to our company, and it helps us to pay the bills, keep the lights on, keep the internet going, travel to places that we do to give you remote content. And it also helps MyPillow by giving them the support of people who genuinely value quality and companies that support real people right here in the United States and employ people all over this country and give back to this country. Go directly to mypillow.com, use promo code Mary Grace, and buy everything you need for the home. There's no need to spend time shopping anywhere else. Go to mypillow.com, use promo code Mary Grace, get your towels, pillows, sheets, robes, dog beds, pet beds, cat beds, whatever it is that you want for the home. Go to mypillow.com, promo code Mary Grace. It's easy. Don't waste your time anywhere else. Mypillow.com, promo code Mary Grace. Thank you. Listen, your health is your best investment. We have a country to save, and we need people who are in the best shape of their lives, physically, mentally, spiritually. Why not connect with a team who cares about you on every single level from the inside out? Official Synapse is that team. Officialsynapse.com. It's official, SYNAPSE.com. Tell them Mary Grace sent you, and they will treat you like family. If you're like most people, you really probably haven't thought about transferring your paper dollars into physical gold and silver. But I want to tell you a story. My friend Andrew Sorcini over at Beverly Hills Precious Metals, he recently went overseas and he wanted to buy a watch. He likes fine watches. He took 3 currencies with him. He took gold, he took Bitcoin, and he took American dollars. Now, there used to be a time when the American dollar was king. I remember that when I used to travel overseas. Everybody wanted dollars. The people that he was dealing with would not take his dollars because the dollar is so devalued around the world. They wanted the gold. So this is what I recommend to you. I want you to think about this. If you have cash in the bank, if you have an investment account that you have worked hard for years to accumulate, consider the value of converting that money into physical gold and silver. You're not buying something that's losing value. You're changing those worthless dollars into a tangible physical asset that will go up in value, which it has done historically. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to bh-pm.com. The first thing you're going to do is schedule that free consultation. Second thing, Just think rationally about this, pray about it, go to the Lord, see what the best decision for you and your family is. I can't tell you that. I don't want to pressure you into that. What I do know is don't be scared, be prepared. And so the third thing you want to do is make a decision for you and your family. Make a decision, take action. bh-pm.com. Let them know Mary Grace sent you. I just want to give a shout out to everybody who watches this show. Thank you for being a participant. Thank you for being a loyal audience member. I just want to remind you, if you like what you've seen, please share this and don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications, and also sign up for my email list so you never miss a show. Wasn't that great? Um, I think it's only 4 minutes, and it's so good. But, the other thing I wanted to mention, because we're talking about meat, is don't forget, that hold on a second. Don't forget, we've got Grid Down, Chow Down. These guys are amazing. So if you're worried about your food supply, if you're thinking the apocalypse could come, even though it didn't come with the eclipse, you're going to want to go to griddownchowdown.com, griddownchowdown.com, and use promo code Mary Grace, and you can just you can get American grown uh, jibber jabber free freeze dried beef. And what they do, guys, is they actually freeze dry it. It's not jerky, it's not dehydrated, it's raw beef. And so when you put this in a bowl and you add water, it reconstitutes. So you can make whatever you want, whether it's tacos, meatloaf, hamburgers, smash burgers, anything like that. It's all right here in the package. So this is a pound of ground beef. It's really light. It's like 4
Yeah.
ounces because the water's gone. But have you tried it? Have you you're
Yeah,
nodding your head, yeah.
we
Yeah.
have some at the house, yes.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you can use it for prepping, but you can also use it for daily meal preparation because it's just so good. And the guys are expanding. They've gotten more equipment. They're going to be making more offerings. You can do a subscription or you can do a one-time purchase. The subscription obviously is going to save you money. Just remember promo code Mary Grace, griddownchowdown.com. Support our guys out there in the middle of the country who are doing that for you because they're doing all the work so that you can prep and save your meat and not worry about freezer outages. Okay, so let's talk some more about meat
Yeah.
because, you know, one of the things you were talking about uric acid, we're talking about insulin spikes, and it feels like we've been given the opposite information of what we need to get. And so I want to dial in a little bit closer on this idea of doing a carnivore diet, whether it's for a, 2-week, 30-day, 60-day elimination diet, or if it's just becomes your lifestyle. Can you explain the rationale behind it and how it might help some people?
Yeah, so the first thing is to just know your body, and I recommend that if you have sugar addiction or cravings, it's good for you. You've got to do at least 2 weeks. If you stop after that 2 weeks and you start back in and you just consume a little bit of sugar in natural form, like a whole fruit apple or something like that, and then that leads to more sugar addiction, then there's underlying things you have to keep going longer. If you have weight loss, just pay attention to brain clarity, pay attention to your weight, pay attention how your clothes are fitting, because a lot of people will not necessarily lose weight right away, but they'll start reshaping themselves. As you start burning fat for energy, your shape actually changes. So I encourage people to start it, manage the process. It's very important to keep your bowels moving. So a lot of people have to increase their water. They have to increase magnesium to make sure, because their bowels will change because you are consuming less fiber. And so there is a
Okay.
retransitioning of that. So you have to learn how to manage that, but just see how you feel for energy. And then that gives you your length of time. And there's going to be seasons where you do a more strict, just having 3 things, and then you can start to bring things in, because I will, and I do better with more of a flex. And so I'll add in some veggies and do kind of like a modified
Mhm.
carnivore where I'm, because I do well with Mediterranean as well, but
Mhm.
I tend, when I get overweight, I tend to be overweight by about 10 pounds. But for me, it's my performance, it's my function. I can't I run out of I get out of breath when I'm exercising a little bit more. So it's really about just paying attention to your body and seeing what changes. Most people report their brain fog is lessening, and then once you start bringing foods back in, just see what allows you to maintain that current level of activity, that current level of weight, that current level of critical thinking, or just having the cognitive ability to get through a day. A lot of people, they get very weary because of just the brain fatigue, the brain fog.
Yeah, yeah, that's something that I noticed. So, I haven't really talked about this to my audience. We haven't had the opportunity. Some of you know that I've been doing this. I have been doing, what I would call Ketovore for about,
Yeah,
6 weeks, and one of the reasons for it is that I really felt like I was going down that runaway sugar train, and and I was noticing some cognitive issues, and I I just decided that I wanted to make some changes in that, in that area, and, I've got there's some history in my family of heart disease, so it was a combination of things, and a friend of mine had been telling me about it for a while, and I was kind of irritated with her, to be honest. I told her, I was like, "Stop." But But it was partly because I was worried about the impurities in the meat.
yeah,
If eating beef that wasn't the purest grass-fed beef. And then I actually heard a doctor talking about the fact that ruminant animals have 4 stomachs. A cow is a ruminant animal, a sheep is a ruminant animal. And in the process, the bacteria in their stomachs can actually deal with things that they consume when they're eating. So if they eat grass that happens to have, pesticides on it, if they're
yeah,
not eating the most pure diet, then, they're actually getting rid of those toxins, and so as a human being, we're not being subjected to that, and that was my biggest roadblock to carnivore, honestly, because I knew that if I did it, I would wanna eat beef, and I was, because I really don't like chicken. Um, so, uh, so anyway, the the point that I was making is that I was interested, but not interested enough to risk eating meat that I thought would be contaminated. And when that roadblock was removed, I decided to give it a try.
yep.
And what I found was it was hard to do this and not incorporate little bits of, sneaky cheats.
Yeah,
Homemade something homemade where I knew that what the ingredients were, a homemade cookie or something like that. And just last week, I made the decision that I was just gonna go full carnivore and do what you were calling the 2-week trial, where
yep.
it's just meat and salt and animal fats. And I'll tell you something, guys, if you start consuming butter and tallow, and eating the fat on the meat, you're not gonna have bowel problems. You're not gonna be constipated. You may at first, but your bowels are gonna yeah, they're gonna be like, "Oh, okay, we actually do function." And that may be too much information, but there are doctors who explain it too, who are specifically in that space, who explain how it works. But the brain fog,
Yeah,
the forgetting words. I was really forgetting, like, common words for things. And the other thing too that was remarkable, even when I just started to make the transition, was the anxiety. I am eating eggs. Somebody said I should include eggs. I am eating eggs. But the anxiety, I didn't know that I had this undercurrent of anxiety. And then I was driving in traffic up around DC, so I'm surrounded by liberals, all driving Priuses and other things. And I'm I'm normally, it's just a really high anxiety situation, and I'm driving along and I'm just kinda thinking, whatever." And it was at that moment that I realized that I have had for years, for my whole adult life, just an undercurrent of anxiety, and it wasn't on my radar until it stopped.
yep.
So,
So
yeah.
common. Yeah, that's so common. And one of the things you mentioned there with the butter, butter has butyrate in it, and a lot of people are deficient in butyrate. And butyrate helps the lining of the intestinal tract. And some people, I saw a comment go through there about um, gallbladder removal. So if you've lost your gallbladder, you don't digest meat all that well, you can still do this diet and program. You just may have to consume digestive enzymes. People with low stomach acid, because of chronic stress conditions or because of sleep disorders or because of zinc deficiencies, won't make enough stomach acid, and their
Okay.
bile system won't make enough to emulsify the fats. So
Okay.
you may have to consume some of those enzymes with hydrochloric acid or ox bile to help break down the proteins. The eggs are a little bit easier with people. And then once you get past that 2-4 week stage, if you're really constipated, there's two things I like to add. Sylvie, I think it was, I saw the name Sylvia pop up there with flax seeds. So women, flax seeds are very, very good for bowels and for um, anti-inflammatory and hormone regulation, especially for women. Not as much for guys, but especially for women. If you don't have, for guys, a lot of times I love olive oil. So I will consume olive oils like someone does fine wines. So you look for a high polyphenol olive oil, and that helps with a lot of the inflammatory stuff. It helps with a lot of the arteries and cholesterol. So just a teaspoon of organic cold pressed good olive oil from Greece or Italy somewhere. They have many of them, and it's so good for your body. And that's where we've gotten away from, is these good oils. If you look at the Bible, they talk about oils so much in the Bible. It's because they're really good for us, not the seed oils that man made here in the United
Mhm.
States that
Mhm.
they ban in other places. So digestive enzymes, there's a lot of different sources for digestive enzymes. Um, if you We
Oh,
use different companies, but
we have them in my wellness store.
there you go.
So if you go to my website, somebody's asking, "Where do you get digestive enzymes?" If you go to my wellness store, on my, um sorry, not my superfood store. So marygracemedia.com, click on the shopping tab, and then go to the superfood store, and I am right now trying to find the name of the digestive enzymes. It's an internet issue. I'm trying to pull up my wellness store. So I'll put that in the chat for you, what it's called. But it's really good, and, we know we're non-GMO, pesticide-free, all of that, and you
Yeah,
can get them in the superfood store. I've drawn a blank on the name. This is not like the memory thing, it's just that I haven't thought of them in a long time. But that's something that we've used as well. And, I have a question, from the Rumble. Can we put a
yeah,
question in
absolutely.
here? Okay. All right. So, and I'm gonna find these digestive enzymes. Um, One of the things that people use a lot is aloe too, right? We have an
Yes.
aloe digest. Okay. There's a few things on our superfoods, store. So let me get you this Rumble question. Millie has a Rumble question. Oh, by the way, our live stream is being featured on Rumble today in the live feed. And so that's very exciting. And I want to give a shout out to the content editors over at Rumble for featuring this broadcast in the live feed on Rumble. I think this is the first time it's happened. And we're very excited about that. So if you go to Rumble, if you're not there yet, and you go and you click on the live, there's two things you can do. Even if you're on Facebook right now, go to Rumble, click on the little live tab at the top, scroll down and find our show and open it. And then also give us a thumbs up, because that will help the editors to see for the future. Okay, this is a good bet. We gambled on Mary Grace and we put her in the live feature, and people are watching. So you could really help us by doing that. Hop off of the other platforms and then go over to Rumble and give us a little bit of Rumble love. All right, so Millie has a comment, not really a question, but I think this is worth uh, commenting on. She said, "Many carnivore people have recovered from depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, and so much more."
Yeah.
So, can you comment on that? Is that something you've witnessed? by
Oh, yeah.
working with your patients, in your clinic? Okay.
Yeah, so we don't do carnivore with everyone, but we have
Yeah.
had many on carnivore, and so we also I was, trained by Dr. Dale Bredesen, who wrote the book, The End of Alzheimer's, and so we have an Alzheimer's memory program that we've worked with people, and we've seen people in their 80s regain their memory, who are diagnosed with,
Mhm.
end-stage Alzheimer's, and so we've seen significant changes. When you reduce inflammation, a lot of your brain chemistry starts to change. And so we see that because most of your serotonin comes from the gut. A lot of the dopamine centers are based off of the communication systems within the brain itself. And if it's inflamed, then we don't see good laying down of the actual dopamine paths. But one of the things that robs our dopamine are the stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. So they're all in the same catecholamine family. So again, what you find is as you reduce your inflammation and your sugar cravings, your mental fogginess improves, your capacity to handle life improves, you stop burning up the stressful hormones as much,
Mm.
and then you've got more room for the good hormones, dopamine and serotonin, the feel good hormones. Plus, in order for us to have GABA, so GABA is the I feel relaxed hormone.
Okay.
Alcohol mimics GABA, but for GABA to be made in your body, you have to have balanced insulin, sugar levels, and cortisol. It cannot be made properly when those three things are out of balance. So that's why we end up seeing a huge boost in dopamine, serotonin, and GABA just from going into the higher protein diets like carnivore.
Okay. Very
Love it.
interesting.
Yeah.
So we have another question. I think this is one that a lot of people may be concerned about because they hear about the effects of meat on the kidneys. And
Yeah.
so this person says, how about someone with CKD eating keto? I'm stage 3A. Is that a kidney? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So um, that's a great question because you have to be very careful, and they're not wrong because most people will have their cholesterol levels go up in the beginning with carnivore, and when it comes, so the adrenal glands need the protein, but your kidneys have to be able to offset the sodium, potassium. So stage three, kidney disease, there's already some level of compromise there. So here's the thing with that. You have to start by fixing and supporting the kidneys. Now, I want you to look at the kidneys a little differently. The kidneys are basically a ball of blood vessels. So, what you want to do is really help support the blood vessels. So, I would ease people in, and this is not a diagnosis because I don't know the condition completely, but with kidney disease, I always make sure hydration stays good. We monitor electrolytes very closely, but we focus on improving the cardiovascular health. When you get the blood vessels working better, then the kidneys can start exchanging the sodium chloride and potassium ions better. And so we actually focus on the blood vessels. So sometimes you have to do a heavy metal cleanse for the blood vessels. Sometimes you have to treat it with what's called leaky vessel syndrome and start to like leaky gut. That's a new term you're going to start seeing in the science. It's just come out since COVID, and you have to improve the strength and vitality of the blood vessels. We do a test at our clinic. It's called the endopat. ENDOPAT. It measures how stiff your arteries are and the arterial lining. When you get the blood work with stage three kidney, and then you can see how stiff the arteries are or the endothelial lining and start to correct it. And again, things as simple as um, olive oils, polyphenol olive oils. And there are different types of anti-inflammatory diets to start with first before doing carnivore or keto. But what I can tell you is sugar is still the culprit when it comes to the kidneys and the health of the blood vessels. We've also seen the spike proteins play a big role with that and take that down. So any type of vascular injury, uh, small, tiny bacterial infections that are co-infections of Lyme and things like that, mycoplasma can even
Mhm.
take down the blood vessels. So you have to kill off those little infections and soften up the arteries, and then you start to see this improvement in the kidney function. We had I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it, Mary. we had a patient with that we referred to the U working with a neurologist who was stage 5 kidney. She had autoimmune kidney, and we feel that her problems, the neurologist and myself, came from
The jibber
uh,
jabber?
the no, but close.
Because we
It
don't say that
actually
word.
no, we don't say the word, but her autoimmune condition came from jibber jabbers, not the most recent one,
Oh,
but
yeah,
jibber jabber.
we just use
Yep.
that word universally. Okay.
But it was the 5G mechanism that robs the electrons. It was the electromagnetic grid that we're
Oh,
on that center into a
yeah.
particular state. And so our process was to onboard electron donation. She went from stage 5 to stage 1 normal healthy kidneys in 2 weeks. And so and she's young, keep in mind. So this is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
child it was an acute attack. And so it can come back, but part of it, that's all about the electric grid within our own system. And so our
yeah.
vascular system has these little tiny
Oh,
holes that are in it from inflammation, from all kinds of challenges. We use the endopat technology. It comes from Israel. Many other places do too. Here in the state of Minnesota, U of M has one, and so does Mayo Clinic. But we're the only clinic that's using it with natural lifestyle therapeutics and paying attention to all these other
mhm.
key components. So to get the kidneys going, get them healthy first, then get into a carnivore is my 2 cents. And you have to stay on top of the electrolytes, because when your sodium or potassium get too high or too low, you bonk and you do not feel good.
Okay. Yeah, the muscle cramps, I will tell you that's been an issue for me coming off sugar, especially in my calves.
Yep.
Somehow at night, why here's my question, why
Yep.
do the muscle cramps increase when you go to bed?
So if it happens in the middle of sleep, that's because you're not moving, and so that's lymph flow. Electrolytes do go down, so you need electrolyte support when you go on the carnivore. But restless leg syndrome, um, a lot of other uh, that's a sleep disorder. So restless leg syndrome, when you're not getting into deep
Mhm,
sleep, that is a big part of the recovery is not happening. So I'll give you an example. So some
mhm,
people with low iron will have the restless leg syndrome. Some people, it's because you're not getting into deep sleep for other reasons, and your immune system's not being operated or turned on to go, so you don't get the lymph flow. So I always recommend with people doing carnivore to keep your water levels up, keep electrolytes going.
mhm,
We use one called LMNT is what we
mhm.
tend to recommend,
Yeah.
not the sugary Gatorade, things like that. But
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
we have a I got the electrolytes from our superfood store, and it's in
perfect.
a little capsule,
Yep.
and that one's called Super Light, Super
Okay.
Lyte. So same idea.
Yep.
It looks like we're gonna be sending people to the superfood store for a lot of these things.
Yep.
Guys, I just wanna mention when you go to my website, go to the shopping tab, go click on superfoods, you're gonna use promo code Mary Grace Media, and, there's something called Enzyme Advantage. There is an aloe vera concentrate that helps a lot of people, and then there's also something called Super Light, Lyte, that is going to come into play with a lot of what Dr. Troy is talking about here. The other one he's talking about is LMNT, and that's a powder, right? That
Yep.
and you can buy that from a lot of carnivore influencers
Yep.
and things like that. They have promo codes. I have another question for you that I think is really interesting because this comes up a lot. Joyce on Rumble says, "Does blood type affect how a person digests particular foods, especially protein?"
So that's a great question. The answer is kind of. And so with the Eat Right for Your Blood Type, they talk about
Mhm.
the two diets that really people do well on are the all meat, the high meat protein diet, and the one that's the vegetarian diet. So the thing is, if you're a universal blood donor like the O types, protein just is good. So they tend to be able to digest food better, but that can be completely undone by lifestyle. So if you have lived a stressful lifestyle, it will undo your blood type. So
Hmm.
so although blood type is a cool thing, you can take the recommendations there as something that does have some impact, but it gets superseded by just a stressful lifestyle and contaminated food. So I don't tend to have people follow their blood type, but most people will do well with protein. The ones who can't aren't making enough stomach acid. And I did see one other question from about iron, too much iron. I want to answer that
Yeah.
because I have that problem.
Okay.
So I have genetically what's called hemochromatosis. So it's a genetic disorder where you don't get rid of the iron. If it's too high, it can cause damage to your liver. So you have to be very careful
Mhm.
when it comes to doing carnivore if you're eating a lot of high iron foods. Most people are iron deficient. If you don't have hemochromatosis and your iron is high, then that's a sign you've got inflammation in your body from somewhere else. So if you're a woman with high iron, there's inflammation coming from somewhere else, and eventually that iron will go down. So what do you do about it? If you eat carnivore, you have high iron, and but you're feeling better on carnivore, go donate blood. That's all you have to do. Just set up and donate blood. And there are a lot of facilities that are looking for clean blood, I'm going to say. And so just do that right now. If you have hemochromatosis, you can still do the diet, but you have to get set up with phlebotomy. So they take 5 pints they take it quite often. They love me at the bank because I have very high hemoglobin, very high iron, and it's very, very clean.
That's interesting, yeah, and I hadn't even thought. I mean, I've heard that they're looking for clean blood, and I've also heard that the, breast milk banks are looking for clean breast milk.
Yeah.
So, very interesting because they said that we were all crazy wackadoodle tinfoil hat people for saying that this might be an issue, and turns out it's not.
Right.
Okay, so we have a couple of good questions. Let's take Rhonda's question about APS. I don't know what that means. What about
APS.
what's APS?
Nothing's coming to mind right here.
Okay,
So,
Rhonda, can you give us some clarification?
yeah.
How about
Oh,
Carlene?
she's talking about antiphospholipid syndrome, probably?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Ron, just give us some clarification if you're talking about antiphospholipid syndrome, because I do have a lot to say about that.
Okay, and, all right, so Sander on, Rumble has a question, and then, uh okay, Rhonda says yes. Then we'll go to Sanders' question, then we'll come back to Carlene's second question. Okay.
So antiphospholipid syndrome is basically when your cell membranes, the phospholipid bilayer, your own immune system is attacking them. So that's an immune system problem. So with that, there are other factors in play. You have to identify what triggered the autoimmune. There's only 8 things: environmental toxins, infections, inflammation, blood sugar dysregulation can still trigger that. There are different oils that you can do for that as well for the APS, and stress can do that. Sleep disorders. So it's low vitamin D is another one. So all of those things have to be addressed at the same time. APS, you're very, very fragile when it comes to dietary anything. So basically, you have to go slow and see what works for you. If you can't digest the fats properly or use them properly, then you're not going to get the benefit. But you have to keep going, and you have to monitor things. So I like to start with some of the things that may have triggered it, and they are generally things like pesticides, certain shots, jibber jabbers as you call them, um,
Yeah.
but also uh, any type of infections can also set that off. So chronic infections.
Mhm.
So we'll see fungus, we'll see Lyme, we'll see mold. People with mold sensitivities a lot of times get that where they're living in a house with mold and they don't even know it. So
Interesting.
those are different things. You have to restore 3 areas: your fat, your omega-3 fatty acids, your vitamin D status, and your glutathione status. Those are the 3 areas to focus on while you manage the other ones. That's a
Mhm.
very
Mhm.
complex disorder to manage, but
Okay.
there's a lot that can be done.
And I think that, one thing that is clear here is that a lot of the issues that we're talking about, people have been diagnosed with in the standard medical system, which I call the medical industrial complex. And I think that, hold on a second. Okay, we've got a random question. I think that it's important for people to understand, when you're talking to Dr. Troy and when you decide that you want to schedule a consultation with his team and maybe become a client, a patient with them, that you're gonna you're gonna find new pathways, and you're gonna be exposed to things that they have seen and done and that work, based on medical science, but they're not afraid to go down these pathways and to take you down these pathways. There's also a very strong faith element in what they do at their clinic, and so if you feel like you're stuck in a diagnosis and you're on the pharmaceutical treadmill, for example, it might be worth just getting a consultation with Troy and his team, with Dr. Spruill. Um, it's a free consultation, and it's right on their website. It's, official synapse.com, synapse. Just see if it's a good fit for you because, like the question that we just had, some people are dealing with very complex issues. And when you're in a big system that is based on this insurance and pharmaceutical and big medicine model, they don't always look at you as an individual. And I have a family member who's going through this. They have type 1 diabetes, and every time they go in for an appointment, there's a different person talking to them. And in a couple of instances, they have gotten confused and mistaken him for having type 2 diabetes, which can be a problem. And he's had to correct them. And so, check it out. If it's the right fit for you, you'll know. But go to the website, fill out the intake form, tell them that Mary Grace sent you, and hopefully you'll find some resolution for a lot of these issues. It's not always an easy fix, but there are answers that you may not know about being in the system that you're in. Did I
Yep.
say that well?
You said it very, very well.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, and it's scary, and
It is.
especially if you're doing telemedicine. If you can get to Minnesota, the Dr. Spurl really encourages you to come in to the clinic there and to see them and have a personal, um, consultation.
We can do more if we see someone here live just once with a lot of our prescriptions. If we don't, we have to use our coaches as the leads, and so that does make a difference. But we still have a lot of education on our website. Our goal is to educate people. We are going to change the healthcare system. We're going to be a part of it. There's going to be a new healthcare system in the next 5 years that's going to be very, very different. And so I want people to know that. And it's going to be focused more on how God made us and how to heal versus the pharmaceutical industry's influence on drugs as the first line therapy. So just please know that. Hang in there because I know there's a lot of people suffering with all kinds of physical and mental ailments that they just shouldn't be.
Yeah, and here's a good question right here. Audrey says, "I have nodules on my lung from mold in my house. I'm out
Yeah.
of the house. Now how do I live?" It's a good
Uh,
question.
it's a great question. So we do, yes, we do a lot with that. I'm gonna refer you to a website called survivingmold.com. But the nodules there are solutions for that. So you can nebulize glutathione. There is chlorine dioxide treatments that we've used successfully for that. So just know I'm on a radio show once a month here locally. It's a faith radio station. And the host of that show has me on every month for the
Mhm.
last 7 years because she had Lyme and mold. And she's a very well-known author. She actually is up for Christian Author of the Year. Her name is Susie Larson, and so her story is very, very amazing and miraculous. Her faith and her testimony. She was very damaged by mold and Lyme and has come back from it very, very well. So just I want you to know that there's hope. There's a lot you can do. It's a complex scenario though.
Mhm. And so this is again, it's a good scenario for which you may really benefit from working with Dr. Troy and his team. I have another question from Rumble, and then I think we'll start to wrap up here. like, once we get the questions going, it just goes and goes. So, we might have to get people to start emailing in the questions, but I think some of the questions come after we get going with the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
People realize, "Oh gosh, yeah, this reminds me, I wanna ask about
Yep.
this." So, this is from Joyce on Rumble. She says, "Do parasitic problems occur very often? If so, what do you recommend for purging them?" Parasites.
Yeah, so parasites are very, very common, and, parasites and viruses, lodge into the inside of our cells, so they can hide really, really well. And so ivermectin is an actual anti-parasitic, as are, there's other medications too. I'm not gonna say the name of it, but there's the anti-parasitic that is now, helping, with cancer. It's getting a lot of,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, okay, so
Yeah,
you have to be
I
careful with
think
that.
that's on the no-no list on YouTube because they're
Yes,
basically
yeah.
governed by the WHO, so yeah.
Yeah. So, but it is working. It does work along with
Okay,
other natural, like
yeah.
wormwood and berberine, and there are some other natural anti-parasitics. But you know what feeds parasites? Sugar.
Sugar.
Yes. So when you do a low sugar diet, what happens is the parasites leave the inside of the cell, start to come outside the cell, and your immune system can then go after them. So it's very, very important to do antiparasitics in conjunction with low sugar when you do it. Now, some medications are actually stronger and have a pretty significant effect, but at this point, we're seeing because of the dampened immune response that most people should do some parasite cleanses at some point throughout the year.
Okay, interesting. This is it's fascinating. You know, we've got right now we have at one point we had over 500 viewers live on Rumble, and we've got over 100 here on Facebook. I think Facebook must be having a censorship day because usually we
Yeah.
have more. Um, we must have triggered them.
Yes,
So
I do that on occasion.
it doesn't take much.
Yeah.
I put a link in one of my posts and that probably just sent them over the edge. So so if you're on Facebook, please share this, please leave a comment, and I want to encourage everybody on every platform that we're on, thumbs up, subscribe, follow, like, share. Every time you do that, and then lastly, comment. When you come back on replay, leave a comment because that always pushes the video up in the feed, and that makes it much more likely for other people to see it. That's just the way it works on social media. When people are commenting, when there's engagement, when people are going back and forth, especially with relevant comments, it really makes a big difference, and that's why we call it social media because
Yeah.
people get involved socially. And so we do appreciate that when you do it. This is such valuable information. We don't want anybody to miss out on it. And so it's awesome. And thank you, Melanie, for sharing. Share it on your walls if you're on Facebook. Send it in a private message, and people will start to get the word. Somebody on Truth Social told me earlier that they shared your last broadcast to a lot of people, a lot of their family members.
Oh,
Um,
very good.
yeah, so we're very, very happy about that. It makes I mean, this, what we're doing today could actually save someone's life.
Yeah.
And that's really in case you're, even if you've had family members who think that you're wackadoodle, for looking at the information you do or for going off the reservation of big medicine and big pharma. Don't worry too much about what they think because you could actually share with them something that saves their life or
Yeah.
the life of one of their family members. And I don't say that lightly. It's important for people to get valid information. Um,
Yes. God honors truth and boldness.
yes, exactly. Okay, I know we must be over the target because 'cause we're getting weird people in the comments. Um, meaning like, bots and trolls and
Yeah.
things like that. Uh, yeah, so radio station, Sander wants to know, if you go to his website is officialsynapse.com. There's a link on there for media, and you can
Yeah.
find all of the past episodes of the radio show.
Yep.
So that's probably gonna be the easiest way to find it. Go to official synapse, synapse.com, and you will find, the previous episodes of the radio show. So you can scan the QR code right there as well. Doctor Spruill, is there anything else that we want to end with today? Um,
Well, I
anything?
just want to encourage people. A lot of people really feel like their health and just what's going on in life. It's just like the weight of it is too much, and sometimes people feel buried. But I'm going to say it differently. You're not being buried, you're being planted, because right now, as we water that seed of just the heaviness, don't forget it, and just make changes. And as you do that, share your testimony, and that's what's going to help other people beside you, because it's there's a huge need right now, and there's a lot of people who are going through a lot of pain, suffering, and trauma. And just by applying the god-given natural principles that we have, it's like putting a seed deep in that soil, and you might feel buried, but it's going to just sprout into something amazing. So stay the course, and don't be surround yourself with other people that are doing this. And I really appreciate Mary because of her, just how you approach, how you're approaching everything. So and your
Thank you.
group and everything, you guys are so on it. It's a privilege to be part of it.
Thank you, yeah, and pretty soon, we're gonna be using a different streamer, and so you'll be able to see all the Rumble comments at the same time as well, which will be awesome, and hopefully, we'll get the X Twitter feed in here as well. One thing I wanna remind everybody is I have a fantastic show lined up tomorrow. We have our favorite millionaire millennial, JT, Lawson, coming on. He wrote the book, What I Learned from My Millionaire Mentor, and he's an eligible young, entrepreneur.
I
And,
know
just
JT, he's
yeah,
awesome.
very smart, very on top of it, and it's a great interview that we're gonna be streaming live tomorrow. I think we'll go on air mid-morning, 11 or 12, but if you're on my email list, you will be able to get the notification, and that's right on my website, marygracemedia.com. Go there, sign up for the emails, and you will get notified when we go on. Also, Dr. Troy is gonna be back on May 4th. So we're, start thinking about your questions, watch the last episodes that we had with him, and mark your calendars for the same time on the I think did I say March? May the 4th,
May
May
4th.
4th. And also a week from tomorrow, Saturday, we're gonna have your favorite conspiracy theorist on the show for Conspiracy of Truth with our good friend Praying Medic. And so we've got some great content lined up. It's always fun to have these discussions, and we so appreciate you being here and giving us the time to answer these questions, to, you know, prayerfully and thoughtfully help people move ahead on the journey that they're on. Everybody's on a journey. It just
Absolutely.
helps so much to have somebody with knowledge and patience and somebody who actually loves God to help them to the next stage of this journey toward healing. Because when we're healthy, guys, we're very much more effective
Yeah.
in the kingdom and in the work that God has for us to do. So everybody remember, does Dr. Troy have a book? That's the last question.
Um, yeah, last question. I do have a book, but I wrote it 20 years ago. Don't get it. I have one coming out now.
Don't buy the book.
Don't buy the book. I have one coming out this summer called Equipped, and I'm working
Okay.
with some people on with that right now. So it'll
Okay, good,
don't buy
good,
the
good.
other one.
Okay, yeah, don't, but you can go to his website and you can read some of his, information on there. You can listen to his past radio shows, and so that's a good place to start. I wanna remind everybody too, I almost forgot, General Flynn's movie has debuted, and his tour has started, his nationwide tour of Flynn movie, and you can actually order the movie or you can order tickets by going to generalflynn.com. Use promo code Mary Grace, flynnmovie.com, promo code Mary Grace. You can stream it for a group. You can stream it. You can just go to the live shows around the country. You can get tickets for those live appearances. General Flynn is going to be at every single one. And so if you've been wanting to meet him, meet his team, talk to him, he talks to everybody. I don't know
Mhm.
how he does it. He has superhuman energy and, just a fantastic man. And so please support him. And this is a movie that you want to show people who have told you that all of the things that you've said about Russiagate and what happened with President Trump and all those things and that Flynn was a traitor, whatever. Show them the movie and then just sit back and go, still think that? You still think there's no deep state? You still think we made it all up? Flynnmovie.com, promo code Mary Grace. So, Dr. Spruill, we thank you so much for being here. This has just been an awesome show today. And we are appreciative of all the wisdom and help that you've given us. Everybody, have a great day. Get outside, take your shoes off if it's not free. Well, even if it is cold, just find a warm, sunny spot, get your feet in the grass, and get some sunshine on your face. And also remember to worship, to listen to what the Lord has to say for you, and get dialed in and not focus so much on the bad stuff. Let God fill you up with the goodness and just, put down your phone, turn it off, and don't let the AI chase you around. Just get out and enjoy life the way that God made for us to do it. Everybody have a great day, and we will be back tomorrow.